Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Dear Future Wash. Today, we're here with Dr. Corina Hernandez. She is currently the Assistant Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in CS at Princeton University. Hi, Corina. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited.
Thank you. To start off, would you mind telling us a bit about yourself and what your role at Princeton kind of includes?
Sure, yeah. Like you mentioned, my name is Corina Hernandez. I have been working at Princeton for a little under a year now as the Assistant Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. My education background and training is mostly involved in higher education, supporting underrepresented students in STEM, and education broadly, and the ways in which culture and society shape education from the outside. So at Princeton, I am focused on creating like a diversity strategic plan that helps and supports underrepresented students either join computer science or retain them in computer science. And we also work very closely with faculty and staff in doing that kind of work.
Awesome, that sounds really cool and important. So for this interview, we're first going to ask you a bit more about yourself and then transition to general topics. To
Sure.
start off, I saw that you initially got your bachelor's in public administration. So I was just wondering how you made the transition from that to education and specifically STEM-focused education.
Yeah, so when I was an undergrad at my undergrad institution, I was an intern in the vice president for student affairs office. And so at the time, I was very interested in working in like public sector or education work. I just wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to study. And so after completing my master's degree and working in higher ed for about 4 years, I decided I was very interested in higher education, very interested in studying education. And I kind of fell into different roles that were around supporting underrepresented students in STEM. And so I was like, this is definitely kind of a focus area that I would like to, study, to research. And so I went to Rutgers Graduate School of Education and I completed my doctorate in education. And my research and scholarship focused on sense of belonging for women and women of color in computer science.
Can you tell us a bit more about your piece of sense of belonging? Because I remember hearing about that and I was like, that's so interesting.
Yeah. Sense of belonging, broadly described, is really talking about the ways in which we feel comfortable, accepted, welcomed in spaces. And I was talking to a lot of undergraduate students at the time, mostly women of color, who were feeling very excluded in some of their computer science classes. Sometimes they were the only one that looked like them. They were the only woman in the class, the only Black woman in the class. And they talked about these experiences being very isolating for them. And so I wanted to spend some time doing some qualitative research, which included interviewing the students, running focus groups about their experiences in computer science. And many of them shared that it was an isolating experience. It really deterred them from continuing on in the major. And so part of my research was on, what can we do as universities, as departments, as centers on campus to help support these students in staying in computer science? We know that there's severe underrepresentation of women in computing fields. And so higher ed has a particular role that it plays in supporting students and staying inside of this major. So that includes, things to retain them, to keep them there, and also things to recruit, bring in new students into the field. So that way, when they enter in those classroom spaces, they don't feel so isolated. They don't feel like the only one, and they can begin to, meet peers that look like them.
I think that's really important. Yeah, especially as you just even if I look at my engineering class, you can just tell the
Mhm.
demographics and everything.
Yeah, definitely.
It's high school. So speaking of projects, another project of yours I came across on your LinkedIn was the Title V STEM Impact grant, which was I was just reading through the little blurb you gave, and it was really, really cool. So can you tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, so that was my first position out when I finished grad school, when I finished my master's program. So I was working at a community college for a Title V Department of Education grant that really focused on supporting underrepresented students at the community college level in STEM broadly. And so what we did is we provided them internship opportunities, undergraduate research experiences, kind of some intense mentoring programs. So that way we had one-on-one connections with students at the community college level. But then we also did a partnership with a 4-year university. So that way we had strong transfer options for our students. So we not only supported them at the community college level, we wanted to make sure that they had an opportunity to transfer into a 4-year program and complete their degree that way.
Yeah, it's something that's really important. And like I've like read about programs like this, but like yeah, I've never
Yeah,
spoken with someone who's like actually been like
yes.
doing that. That's really cool. Then I see like you kind of mentioned earlier, you proceeded to work at Rutgers for like 5 years from like
Mhm,
2018 to quite recently 2023, and
mhm.
then transitioned to Princeton, uh, as a role I described earlier. So what can you tell me about this transition? Like how is the work that you're doing it different, the similar goals, etc.?
Yeah, so when I was working at Rutgers, I was actually working at the women's college there. And so I was doing a lot of diversity work that was focused across the college, not specifically in STEM or computing. And so while I was in this role was actually during the same time I was completing my doctorate in education. So I was doing research, completing this role. I was also teaching the course. I do not recommend doing all of those things at the same time. Um, but so at that, and in that position, I did not have a direct impact on working with STEM students or with computing students. And so when I saw the position here at Princeton that the Department of Computer Science was looking to do diversity and inclusion work, I was like, this is perfect. This matches my scholarship. This matches my interest. And so I was able to make that transition pretty easily into this space. So that way I can support, what Princeton is doing for computer science students and apply my scholarship and kind of expertise in that area. So it's it's DEI work, but it's in a different kind of space where I'm in an academic department, whereas at Rutgers, I was at a kind of an academic college.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Because yeah, this CS specific is like really interesting.
Yes.
So like, okay, what are some initiatives you've taken like or are like starting to take regarding like diversity in CS specifically at Princeton? Like, what can you like tell us about that?
Yeah, so I can say that we have a wonderfully committed set of faculty that really care about student success here. They really care about providing students opportunities to feel included and to achieve in all of their coursework and in their research. And so some things we've done here in partnership with faculty is we have a climate inclusion committee where we take a look at different issues that are popping up throughout the academic year. And we use this as like a kind of a brainstorming think tank session. We have students that sit on that committee as well. We really value looking at the data. So looking at retention data, who are our current students, where are we, kind of lacking in certain areas. We also really care about creating community here. So we are working with faculty on how to create better communities for our graduate students, for our undergrad students, just to make people feel like they're supported in both the academic sense and also the social sense. And so we're taking a look at the whole department really and trying to figure out what are ways that we can just do the work that we're doing better, make it more inclusive, make it more exciting. And so we do that in a number of ways here in the department, but we have wonderful faculty partners, so we couldn't do it without them.
Yeah, I think from like what I've heard or seen at least, I would say like Princeton's like I feel like known for having a really like strong community sense as opposed to like other universities. So
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
okay, now kind of transitioning on more to like the general like advice and like ideas. The first thing I would like ask you is like for like women who are like pursuing either like computer science, any engineering, or any STEM topic that's predominantly, a male field, or just not even though not predominantly, it is just like has this like whole like male like idea around it. How do you tell them to kind of pursue the opportunity and like deal with the like sort of stress that comes with being like some of the female women in your class while also not victimizing yourself and like doing the best you
Yeah.
can?
Yeah. So there's a number of things that I've seen both throughout the research and also just my experience in working with students. And one of those things is that when students find their communities early on, they're more likely to persist and more likely to have higher grades in the major. And this is, obviously easier said than done. But I found that students who can connect with other student organizations, they can find a peer group. That they work to sort of create study groups when they find kind of that community really early on. And I'm talking about like, first year, first semester, if it's possible. It's more of like a sort of a push and a driver. The second thing is that finding a mentor, which I know again can be very difficult, is also one of those things that sort of helps kind of push and build confidence. And I would say that I know a lot of women students are looking for women mentors, and those are wonderful, mentors to have, but sometimes they're few and far between. And so I would say asking, asking people to be your mentor, and if they don't have the capacity to do that, asking them to maybe recommend another mentor. You'd be surprised how many allies are out there that are willing to sort of support students, especially underrepresented students in the field. And then I would also say, just sort of like normalizing failure and setbacks and not letting that be sort of the end all of your experience. I think there's a common misconception that a lot of underrepresented students feel like they're the only ones going through this really difficult moment. They're the only ones who failed that midterm. They're the only ones who failed that class. And it's just not true. There are lots of students who have setbacks in their careers or in their academic careers. And so like, just sort of like normalizing that, and then thinking about the campus resources that are there to support you, because this is a hard field. It's difficult, but it's not impossible to do. And lots of our peers are sort of struggling with the same thing. So just really ensuring that we normalize those kinds of issues that come up.
Yes, my second question is, we talked a lot about how it's really important, like there's diversity from like the student perspective. Now, like from like a product perspective or like what you're actually creating perspective, why is it important to have diversity, especially in computer science?
Yeah, so I think, and, I talked about this with your group too, is that we know that there's bias in tech that exists. And we know there's a number of reasons for this. And so like, it's important to have diverse sort of teams building, designing, and creating so that we are bringing that perspective to the table. Oftentimes there are meetings or closed spaces where we're designing or creating for people who are not at the table. And this happens in higher ed too, right? Like we could be sitting in an all faculty or all staff meeting, and we're sitting here creating a whole new plan for students, but there's never a student voice in that space. And so it's kind of the same concept. It's like, we don't want to design for people. We want to design with people. And so just keeping that kind of center to the field of design, creation, implementation, making sure that we have as many voices in the process as possible. So I think one of those things is, including the people that you're designing and creating for on your planning teams, and just ensuring that there's lots of checks and balances to make sure that we try to reduce bias as much as possible. We know that bias will always exist, but we can do better to reduce it.
Yeah, I agree. I think, yeah, it's like the bias in tech, the bias in AI especially is a really like growing issue.
Yeah.
Now my next question is diversity in like education and classrooms, in your experience, does it translate to diversity at like top positions or like C-suite levels? Is it a pipeline, or are there like bigger challenges that they face trying to climb the like corporate ladder?
I would say that there's challenges at every level. This is always a conversation we have in higher education. It's like, should we focus on retaining the students that we have or recruiting new students? And I think the truth is that if we're not retaining the students that we do have, it's very dangerous to try to actively recruit those same students because there's something that's wrong when they're here, right? And so like, it's a bit of a pipeline issue. But I think the more that we can introduce computing at even younger ages and get students interested at younger ages and have access and exposure to these kinds of ideas is definitely going to help in our recruitment process. But I also think institutions like higher ed institutions have a really, really big role at making sure that we create communities that are open, welcome, and inclusive to these students, because we can recruit them all day long, but once they're here, it's about the experience that they have, and we want them to have a really good experience.
Yeah. When it comes to recruiting and stuff, I know you guys, for example, so for context for all the viewers, my high school, like especially our little STEM group in our high school, went over and we went on this like whole day at Princeton where we met Corina and she gave us a talk, and we also like saw other labs and things. So are these like high school outreach activities, in your opinion, really important to getting students involved? And if so, what other ideas do you guys have for like getting high schoolers involved?
Yeah, for sure. I think just the idea of bringing high school students onto a college campus is huge. I know for me in my own personal experience, I didn't have that experience when I was in high school through an organized trip. That was something that I had to do on my own. And so just getting onto a campus, seeing what the lab spaces look like, meeting with other students, meeting with faculty, sort of giving you that like inside peek to what campus life could be like is extremely important to our recruitment process. We want to give you all that opportunity to experience the campus kind of in real time and what that would feel like for you all. And so I hope that was the experience you all had and got you excited about, applying to colleges and
Actually,
universities.
the lunch was really good. That really,
Yeah,
yeah.
good. I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah. So that kind of brings up a question for me that I've asked like a lot of the college students that come on this interview. When it comes to like finally picking the university that you're going to attend, because at the end of the day, every community is not for everyone, like just whether it be personalities and just vibes or the location. What advice would you give to specifically the juniors and seniors watching this who are trying to select the colleges right for them? What things to look out for?
Yeah, so I would say, selecting a college it's difficult, right? Because everyone's so different. And so I would say like just try to listen to your inner voice and like what's the most important and salient thing for you. So for me, going to school, it was about focusing on my identity as a woman, as a Latina woman. I wanted to be in a space that kind of represented those experiences for me. I knew I didn't want to take a bus to class, so that kind of eliminated a lot of schools that were really, really big. I knew I wanted to have some type of smaller communities on campus. And so when looking at schools, looking at like, what are those communities? What do they look like on this particular campus that I'm interested in? Do I have a particular hobby or interest? Do they have a student organization? Is there an office that I can think about? What's obviously my major? What's my career focus? Like thinking about the communities I want to be a part of when I'm on campus is really important. And then a ton of those like logistical things, like, do I like cold weather? Do I like hot weather? Do I want to, wake up and be able to walk to my class that's 10 minutes away? Or is it more of like an open campus or city feel? So like just really listening to your inner voice about what you think would feel comfortable for you. It's like one of those things, it's hard to know exactly what you want until you're in it. But obviously if you can visit campuses, if you can read materials online, if you can talk to current students that are there and get their experiences, that's another wonderful way to sort of understand what the campus feels like.
Well, thank you so much. Those are all the questions we had for today. Do you have any last comments or anything to say to the people of Blush?
Oh, no, I want to, encourage you all to, believe in yourselves, use your resources. There's tons of people out here that really care and that really want to broaden computing and broaden STEM to make it more inclusive. And we really need lots of diverse voices in the space. So I think that's all for today.
Thank you so much, Karina, for coming on, and thank you to the viewers for watching.
Thank you.
We'll be here with an episode very soon. Thanks.